Welcome to Tech Topics brought to you by Cybervenger. We help keep small businesses stay protected and compliant with cutting-edge cybersecurity and IT solutions.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. My name is Andy. I'm the managing consultant for Cybervenger. Today is another in our series of the 110 controls of the NIST 800-171. This is a deep dive into Control 3.3.1. So if you take a look down here, you'll see here this is our control. And it's talking about a familiar topic, something we've talked about with almost every other subtopic, that every other control we've talked about has a piece of this, right? It relates to this. It's about logging. Logging is really huge when it comes to security in general, in particular compliance. So it's very important to know when a breach occurred, to know what happened during the breach, to get your forensics figured out, to be able to determine how far your adversary got, and to be able to report that in to the DoD or any other partners involved, right? Logging is absolutely essential for that thing. But it's also really essential to prevent a breach. You want to be able to check your logs on a regular basis and identify activities that are out of the ordinary, to identify that maybe your outer defenses are beginning to show weakness, that something's worming its way in, or that something concerning is happening, and so that you can respond to it. The challenge with logging is there's several challenges there, right? It's one, how much space do you have to store the logs? Because logs can get quite huge depending on how detailed your logging is. Performance, system performance. Every time you try and capture an event into a log, it's going to exert a certain amount of drain on performance. Sometimes it could be a negligible amount, trivial even, or extreme. So you have to counterbalance that kind of thing. And finally, just plain noise effect. You can log a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff on some kind of certain systems, like Windows systems. Holy cow, it's amazing what you can log. But most of that doesn't tell you any information you need to know. It's kind of useless. It's noise. And it takes up performance. It takes up disk space. It just takes up, mind space on the eye when you're trying to read these things. Now, to sort of manage that, there's another product or class of products called a SIEM, S-E-I-M. It's products that help you to aggregate your logs, to pool your logs from various devices, be it your switches, your firewalls, your Windows boxes, Active Directory, Radius servers, wireless infrastructure, whatever it is you got out there. Maybe even applications generate separate logs. All those different logging points, you want to be able to collect that and then filter out noise and accentuate things that are elevated risk. So SIEM tools will help you do that. So that's something to look into more of. Now, this is a deep dive it's a deep dive into a NIST control. So it's kind of quick and light about the aspects of logging itself, more talking about how it relates to NIST. So some of these topics I'm just kind of glossing over and encourage everyone to put further questions in the comments, of course, but do some research on your own. Firewalls can do a lot of logging. That's big because that's usually the access point that the bad guys are starting with. It's your border. Internet's, it's a bad neighborhood, right? All kinds of seedy characters hang out there, and it's very shady. So that's your entry point. That's your first and most common attack surface. But there are other attack surfaces. It could be email that's coming through. It could be files being transferred from outside organizations, or all kinds of stuff. So, but firewall logging for sure is a big one, and you want to be able to do prioritization of what logs get shown up, so you can see things that are more relevant easier first, and the less likely things later. And there's also a difference between logging and alerting. So if you have an event, like let's say an administrator account keeps getting hit and locked out over and over again, that should probably email somebody. Or maybe if a security service fails, or antivirus has been detected to now no longer be active on a bunch of workstations or a server, you want to be immediately pulled away from what you're doing and shown that this is happening. That's alerting. So you might get a text message on your phone, or a phone call even, or an email or something like that to grab your attention. Whereas logging really isn't necessarily about that so much. It's just about, you get the information, how do you retain it, how do you rotate it, how do you protect it? Protecting is a good point too, because if your logs are on the device that's being logged, so like a Windows server, for example, if all the Windows Server logs are on the Windows Server and that Windows Server gets compromised, the bad actor could just as easily wipe those logs and even know that information. So you want to have a system for pulling those logs off the affected devices onto something else, there is a service, a common service called syslog. It's a real common daemon out there, and there's some free ones like Kiwi Syslogger and some other ones out there. If your node, say a firewall or a switch, supports syslog, you can push it to a separate logging server, everything that comes in as it comes in, and then that server can have its own security boundary, allowing only syslog data to come in, and then that's a way to protect those logs and have them available and retain them for longer and not consume disk space on the object that's doing the logging. Furthermore, if you have a firewall, there's a lot of advanced logging that can be done sometimes with additional products. Like SonicWall and Fortinet, off the top of my head, both have additional products you could purchase that'll do more advanced logging and reporting. Reporting is important too, so you can see what's going on in a way that makes sense to the human eye, not just a bunch of bits thrown in a giant database. Because if you can't see it and understand it, you can't act on it. If you can't act on it, kind of what's the point, right? We want logging to not just be forensic, but to be preventative, to help you take action to stop a threat as it's going on. Stop it in its tracks. So that's some of the things. One of those, if we look down here, one of the tools that you can use in Windows logging is there's a lot of advanced auditing features that come in Windows that are turned off by default, and you can turn them on. And if you look here, I got a simple script that does that. I had ChatGPT write it for me. It's just in PowerShell, and it's not really all that long. You can see the code here. I will spare you the going through the code too much, but if you see just really quickly, it's maybe a page worth of code, and it's turning things like detailed tracking on, file share, registry, and you can audit both success and failure. So if it works, it'll still log it anyway. And you may want that in the case of something like CUI. Well, just because someone's allowed to access it and they were able to access it doesn't mean that it's not, a nefarious actor. Could be. They could have gotten some access, and you want to be able to see who had access to it. Or maybe it's an insider threat, someone who's supposed to have access but not supposed to be accessing that file at this particular time. If you're suspicious of something, you can go back to the log and see it if it's being captured. So this will allow you to actually capture those events. And let's say maybe that's too hard in performance. You turned out certain things you don't need. You can write a script that undoes these changes too. And it's good to kind of know what the defaults were. I asked ChatGPT to create a rollback script. That doesn't mean it's right. ChatGPT is not perfect. It's still very much in the development phase. So if you're going to use ChatGPT as a tool, make sure that you understand enough about the code to determine whether it's doing what it should or shouldn't be doing. I'm certainly not going to warrant that this code is safe, and I know ChatGPT does not warrant that as well. So you have to do the warranting there. You have to determine it. And every once in a while, ChatGPT is wrong. So it's a cautionary tale there, particularly with NIST stuff. I was real disappointed. ChatGPT can do so much in terms of writing reports and doing documentation stuff for you. And I had it trying to write up some stuff about the NIST controls, and they got the numbering all wrong on a lot of them. At least at the particular occasion that I used it. Maybe it's right now. I don't know. But just a word of caution. These are very powerful tools, but they are not a silver bullet. You still got to do the work yourself. They're like a nail gun. Nail guns were revolutionary, when you're a roofer, to be using nail gun instead of a hammer, but it's not going to put the roof on by itself. Right? So just kind of a reminder how that works. But it is pretty cool, right? I mean, all I said right here was, I put the prompt in, one sentence, write me a script in PowerShell. Pfft, there it is. Poof, it popped it out in seconds. I thought it was really cool. So that's one tool you can use to get around some of the logging. Another thing I would do is make sure that when you do your logging, when you start customizing the logging and try and think about what you're trying to capture, write it down, man. I mean, write down exactly what you're doing and why. Write down that you're going to be using a syslog server and why you want to use it, what the parameters and performance specifications are. How much hard drive space are you going to divert towards it? How are you going to protect it from tampering? How are you going to log the logging server? What devices is it going to be pulling from? What's your log retention? How long are you going to hold on to these logs? What's the action if the log gets flooded? What a lot of attackers will do is, knowing that the default Windows logging is only, it's less than a gig, and you could flood an event log with data, and what it'll do is overwrite the last log, right? And then you have a bunch of new stuff and none of the old stuff. So once you broke in, if you don't have full control, you can just generate a bunch of benign events and then crowd out the ones that show how you got in. So you may want to think about how you want to do this. Maybe it stops logging after a certain point and keeps the older stuff, or dumps it to a file to be backed up, or whatever. There are also PowerShell scripts I've used before that'll take the Windows log, export it from Event Viewer to a physical file, and then you can back that up. It's another great way to get data off of that if you don't have money for a SIM product or a syslog daemon or something like that. Another kind of a lightweight, poor man's way to do it. Again, ChatGPT can help you write it. I wouldn't assume it does it correctly. Make sure you do your job as a quality control person. Make sure that script is safe and that it works properly. But it can save you a lot of work. It's really kind of cool. And we're getting into more into AI ourselves here at Cybervenger, so I thought it'd be kind of fun for me to showcase how we can use it to streamline our work for our customers. And it's kind of a nice thing to do. But again, every device is different, and you got to think about how you do it. You want to write it down. You want to make sure that whatever is in your policies, what you're actually doing. I've talked about this before. You got to talk the talk, walk the walk. You can't say you're doing something and not being doing it. You're better off with a bleak picture of your network, properly documented, than a rosy picture in the documentation that doesn't match reality. Because if you get caught between the two, there's all kinds of ways that can backfire. In an audit, you're going to be in big trouble if you get caught lying. Another real common one, I know this has nothing to do with NIST, but insurance forms these days, people get these requests from their insurance company. Hey, are you doing all this stuff? Are you, the antivirus, EDR? Are you detonating attachments? Blah blah blah, and all that stuff. Well, it's really easy to just write yes to everything, send it in, and save a ton of money on your insurance. Problem is that's fraud. You're lying. It may seem trivial to you. It's like, whatever. I'll just claim ignorance. I thought it meant something else. But if you get caught, it's an excuse for the insurance company not to pay a claim. And if you're like, well, that's never going to happen. Okay, that's fine. If you want to take that risk, then why pay for the insurance? if it's never going to happen, why pay for cyber insurance, right? Don't bother paying it at all. Save 100%. So yeah, clearly, if you're getting an insurance, you think it might happen. So don't play games. I'm a little off the beaten path of NIST, but this is already a 12-minute video, I think, 12 minutes so far and counting here. And I can go on and on about logging. This is just kind of wet your whistle and kind of remind everyone how important logging is to CMC certification and, of course, to NIST itself. So that's all I got for today. And if you have any questions about the details of how to log and what to log, we're more than happy to get into that. Please put it in the comments. We could definitely use some engagement to you folks out there on YouTube. We'd love to help share information and knowledge. Of course, we're always available for consultation too. If you want to do one-on-one, you want to talk about things you want to talk about in a chat, freely watchable on the internet by anybody, we're available for that too. And that's all I got for this week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has provided valuable information to you. Be sure to share this video with other small business owners to spread the word about the importance of cybersecurity. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you want more information about cybersecurity, visit us at www.cybervenger.com.